So welcome to our 131st episode of the Gutenberg Changelog. We will talk about Gutenberg plugin releases 23.1, 23.2, and 23.3. There are calls for testing out for WordPress 7.1, and we have more. I'm your host, Birgit Pauli-Haack, curator at the Gutenberg Times and a full-time core contributor for the WordPress open source project sponsored by Automatic. Today, Isabel Brison joins me from Sydney again. Isabel is a longtime core contributor and JavaScript developer on the Gutenberg project. Welcome back to the show, Isabel. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
Hi, Birgit. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you're here because you and your team have worked on some of the most exciting features that coming to Gutenberg. People have been waiting for quite a long time, so we will dive in when we get to the updates. How is Sydney?
It's winter, cold, rainy,
Ah,
the usual.
the usual, yeah. How is the technology? I know you're going to meetups there. Are these WordPress meetups or are these other technology meetups?
I go to a variety of tech meetups. There's not a huge amount. So I'll go, say, to JavaScript meetup, and there's a good technology leaders one too. I enjoy going to the Python meetup, even though I don't work with Python. It's just a lovely community, and they have some interesting talks. So it's sort of whatever's on offer, I guess.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I found out in Munich to the technology community, and I kind of connected with a local Claude meetup community. And it was kind of interesting at the technical university or the design university. They switch around the places, but it was an interesting,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they had some lightning talks, yeah, like 20 minutes talks, and it was really cool. Yeah, I think we need to get
Nice.
out more.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
like going out after work and just, even if it's just to listen to some tech talks, you get a bit of air and meet new people.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. All right. So we have a few announcements. Oh, WordPress 7.0 has been released 2 weeks ago, and we are heading big steps towards 7.1. Beta 1 is scheduled for July 15th. That's kind of a little bit of a, that's only 6 weeks away, kind of. And
Yeah,
yeah, so we
that's
get
not a
going.
long
But
time at all.
yeah. And contributors have been working on the next major version already. So the official roadmap planning post is in the works. The team is in the final steps to assemble the release squad. And we do well from the Gutenberg plugin releases, we get a pretty good idea what might come through. Also from what didn't make it into 7.0 as well. So we will, but it's the web, right? Web is translated for me in the Japanese kind of design thing. Yeah, it's like wabi sabi. Nothing is
Mm.
finished, nothing is last, and nothing is perfect. So we always get work to do, and it's always getting better. Yeah,
Yep, it's a work in progress.
it's a work in progress. So there are two calls for testing out now. One is announcing the collaborative editing outreach effort for 7.1. Many of you, dear listeners, remember, okay, collaborative editing, real-time collaborative editing was pulled from the 7.0 because it wasn't stable enough for all the hosting environments that are out there. And there was this call for testing out for hosting, and now there's another one for outreach effort to make sure that everything is kind of caught for 7.1. And Anne McCarthy just published it on the Make Core blog. So you can join it anytime. There's a separate channel, Collaborative Editing Outreach, that you can. It's kind of modeled after the full site editing outreach program that ran for 2 or 3 years. I hope this doesn't run for 2 or 3 years before it's released, but it definitely is there are more people kind of discussing it and how it all is supposed to work. Amy Kamala, who was the release coordinator for 7.0, and Justin Tadlock, who is a developer advocate at Automatic and a team rep, are helping Anne to coordinate those calls for testing, and also some of the teams at Automatic who work with enterprise level are also there. So yeah, it's a bigger discussion on how collaborative editing works on all the levels.
Yeah, it's a pretty big and complex piece of work.
Yeah, join the channel and dive right in if that's a feature that you are excited about. I'm excited about it, but I also only have 2 or 3 people that handling my editing stuff. So I don't have 10 or 15 editors in my posts. So another cause for testing is about the media editor modal that has been added to the image block. Ramon Dodd published a call for testing about 2 weeks ago about the new modal for the image cropper. It's kind of the bigger image cropping in the block editor, so you don't have to, it's a much easier way to get your images in line, but you can also rotate the images and resize them. And it has been merged with the Gutenberg plugin. It also, with 23.3, is out of experimentation. So anybody who has the Gutenberg plugin installed can test this. And Ramon has some great details on how to test things and what to look for and how to share the feedback. It also has a little paragraph there on what's out of scope. So for this version, we, of course, share all the links in the show notes. Isabel, you're part of that project. What excites you about it?
I haven't actually worked on it. Well, not I helped a little bit at the very beginning when we were discussing sort of choice of libraries and whether to build our own or use a third party, and a bit with the initial testing. But it was mostly Ramon and Andrew's work. This latter part, the bit that's now in Gutenberg. In fact, it was all their work. And I think it's super exciting because replacing the old cropper, I never liked it. I have to be perfectly
Yeah.
honest. I hate the old cropper. I never could figure out how to use it. It was not ergonomic at all. And this one is such a better experience. Aside from allowing us to do all the stuff that the old cropper, the in-editor cropper is what I'm talking about, the one that you can access from the image block toolbar. It's also on the site logo block, so you can now
Oh,
access it from
nice.
both those blocks. And the new one, in addition to what the old one did, also allows you to do free cropping and free rotating. So if you want to rotate your image 3 degrees, and if you want to crop it to whatever weird aspect ratio you like, you can do that, which you couldn't on the old one.
Yeah.
And it's just a much nicer experience. I believe it's also more accessible than the old one in terms of the keyboard accessibility of it. It's better too. So all advantages. I think
Yeah.
they did a great job on it.
I used it just for a little bit, and I was so amazed how smooth it was. Yeah, it was also much more intuitive. I never knew what to do with the cropper when I was opening it previously, and said, "So how do I do this now?" I had to think every time, and this one is very, very intuitive and very smooth also to use it and to see it. So I'm really happy about that. I'm hoping it makes it into 7.1. Yeah, so we have
Yeah,
that.
it's on track. I don't think, I mean,
Mhm.
barring any major natural disaster, I don't think that there's any reason for that not to make
No,
7.1. It's a great piece of work. It's really stable. And now that it's not behind the experiment flag anymore, it's real users are using it. I'm sure we're going to get tons of feedback if there's anything that's not
right.
100% perfect.
Yeah.
And we still have time to iterate on it until beta 1.
I really appreciate that Romana and Andrew went to the research portion and kind of looked at how other graphic programs actually are doing things and tried to get some of the experiences also into the block editor. So, okay, yeah. So, two calls for testing for those who want to dive in. It's a very good way to contribute to WordPress because it's so close to what you're doing with WordPress. And so, not only developers, but also content creators can help test this even better. And those who work at agencies or work with clients at agencies to kind of see how that all works. Which brings us to what's released. I mentioned it, WordPress 7.0, Armstrong was released. We talked about it on previous episodes on this changelog with various people from the agency view, from the designer view, from the content creators views. We will share in the show notes in case you need to catch up the field guide, the link to the official field guide for WordPress 7.0, as well as to the source of truth on Gutenberg Times that has all the user-facing stuff in there. Those are the best information on 7.0. I have not seen in the last 2 weeks any major boo-boos that came in. Yeah, it was such a great testing cycle. Yeah, with a delay of 6 weeks, most of the bugs were actually caught quite early or in this release. So I'm not sure when there will be a point release, which normally happens within a few weeks of the major release. But I have not seen yet any planning for that, but it could be end of June after WordCamp Europe. So let's dive into the Gutenberg releases. We'll
Yeah.
start with Gutenberg 23.1. Oh, one question.
Mm-hmm.
Isabel, do you have a favorite feature that came into WordPress 7.0?
Oh, I don't know. There's a bunch of interesting features, and I worked on some of them. Of course, I have sort of my personal favorites of the ones that I worked on, of which one that it was very, very subtle or sort of low profile. We didn't talk about it much, but I worked on a little handy addition to the grid block, or the
That's true.
grid layout type, I should say, that allows us to configure a responsive number of columns. So by setting column count and a minimum width, you can say, I want my block to always have at maximum 3 columns, but on smaller screens, it can go down to 2 and even 1. So that's something we didn't have before, and I'm quite happy with it. I think it's a good
Yeah.
improvement. But compared to there was loads of stuff. The pattern editing work, I think, is going to be really handy. And what else? There was the notes feature.
No, I was in 6.9 already, yeah.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah.
no, there was something about what? Oh God, I'm confusing my
Oh,
releases.
yeah, they're kind of, they
What else
melt
was in
together. Once
7.0?
it's
I
released,
feel like
they melt all together. It's kind of,
yeah.
was it there or there? Yeah, sometimes. All right, let's dive into Gutenberg 23.1. It was released
Mhm.
on May 7th, had 212 closed PRs by 49 contributors. So we are really, wrapping up the releases or the work on Gutenberg and the block editor. It's now not only the block editor, it's the site editor, it's the data views, it's the design system, those all. So this Gutenberg repo has kind of exploded in other areas for the WordPress ecosystem. So, but yeah,
Mhm.
the first one on the list, and it's really interesting how these changelogs are actually automated and coming together, is the upload media and it enabling concurrent sideload uploads. That's an interesting thing because it's so a performance issue to have multiple streams on upload on images, so you don't have to wait so long that the image shows up in your
Mhm.
block canvas, and that's a really good improvement for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'd imagine when bulk uploading, particularly.
So when you copy paste content from another source, it has this also a feature that you can download and upload the images that you connect there. And that also happens in this multiple stream uploads thing. So it's really cool. You only know this because it's faster, but other than that, there's no
Mm.
disruption of your work or any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of good work. This was also there was the client side. This is part, I believe, of the client side media processing work that did not make 7.0, but is now being aimed at 7.1. That's mostly Adam Silverstein's been working on that. I haven't kept a close eye on it, but it looks like, very useful work, and it'll be good once we manage to get it in for
Yeah,
performance,
yeah. Adam
particularly.
Silverstein has worked on these image handling features quite a bit for 6.9 as well. So yeah, there is an enhancement that I have flagged here, but I'm not sure how useful that is. It's for the WordPress UI overlays and global preview styles on the
Mhm.
storybook. So the WordPress UI is the next level of components for WordPress.
It's sort of the successor of the components package.
Yeah. And at the moment both are used, but I have seen now efforts to migrate, merge things, I don't know how you call it, but to get it kind of in one thing. But the overlays, the preview styles is how you can show the preview in the storybook. So you have a better inkling how it's going to look later on.
Yeah, that should be good.
And then there are tons of changes for the components, the admin UI, the UI components, dialogues. This is mostly for developers that are working with WordPress and creating their own, either building WordPress or creating plugins for WordPress to have a unified design system, unified component system, that they don't have to kind of come up with your own interfaces. Yeah, those decisions are already made, and you can kind of build on top of things. Before any of that, even the components, yeah, every plugin had to design their own interfaces, and now this is really cool.
Yeah, it's good to have a sort of a system that you can use when you're extending and you need to build a new screen or something for your plugin. You can just use these components and everything looks integrated with WordPress.
And it's also good for the users because they don't have to think about how do I use this tool now, or how do I filter now on this screen, because it's all unified system and it's all built out and stable. So the next thing is on the notes getting a few updates. So right now it's in 23.1. It's mostly refactors on the positions and the floating board. But we will see later in the other releases that there are some nice features coming in. For the block libraries, we have updates to the tabs block. I'm really hoping that it comes into 7.1. It's still behind an experiment flag, but now it can handle duplicate tabs, meaning duplicate handles on the tabs. And it follows now WCAG tabs pattern for accessibility in the renaming of the blocks. So which is it's a major step towards accessibility and acceptance for that. I'm really waiting for the tabs to come into Gutenberg or to
I think
WordPress.
it's mostly, I think the renaming was about, as I understand it, so that the blocks have names that match the accessibility standards, or how these things are known. As there's a WCAG pattern, it's linked to in the PR, and those sort of example patterns that the WCAG website has with for people to know how to use ARIA attributes correctly, which is a whole science.
Yeah.
And the idea is to have our tabs blocks match the names of that pattern so that it feels more standard, and it'll be more familiar to people who might have implemented tabs in other places.
Yeah, and those are the standards also where screen readers kind of tap into, and people that use screen readers kind of have a common pattern for that. Yes, so that definitely elevates the tabs block in its accessibility.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's going to be pretty useful block once it's stabilized. So I hope it is soon.
Yeah, I know that quite a few block collections have tabs right from the beginning in the last 8 years, and they're not going to go away because the first iteration of any of the core blocks will not be as feature rich as any of the block collections that have been developed for the last 6 or 7 years. Yeah. So yeah, the next one is tapping into the image cropper we talked about. So you can, and it was tapping into the keyboard actions with drag handles on the canvas. So you can use your mouse to do some of the actions that you want to do with the image cropper or the image tool. Yeah, if you say image cropper, it kind of reduces it to cropping, but yeah, it's also the handling to
can
tilt
flip
it
and
and all that.
rotate and all that too.
Yeah. There's a new API for the WordPress grid package, but that's a different grid that you are working on.
Yeah, that's not the block layout grid. This is
No,
something else. This is a
it's
grid that you can use for dashboard UI
exactly.
for sort of admin stuff.
Yeah, that's the new API that powers the new experiments that in Gutenberg, that is the dashboard widgets. We kind of talk about it a little later. You, as a plugin developer or extender of WordPress, you can use them now as well for any of your dashboards. If you are having a plugin that has some data whizzing, kind of, you can put them into these grid package and display them on your plugin settings pages. The guidelines is also a new API, and it has now a public API method and the REST API route to it. There have been iterations after 23.1, so I think that that would be really helpful to look at later. The guidelines are actually a whole set of content types that are for AIs. Pretty much when your agents come to your WordPress site, you can tell them what to do with things. What's the purpose of the site? What's the editing guidelines? What's the, how you want AIs to behave on your site if you let them in. And it's really important when you have other agents come in that you don't control. Yeah, that sounds scary.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, as a site owner, connect your Claude to your website, you can have in the guidelines all the things that you want Claude to know about your site. So you don't have to put it all in a prompt, and it kind of finds all the things. And it's also your memory. Yeah. So if you use an agent to do your SEO, to do your some of the content updates, like headlines or tags, your policies on how to do tags and categories, that's all things that you can solidify in your documentation in the guidelines for your AI, and it will remember that. But it's also interesting to see the discussions about it. I had a short discussion with Jagosh, who was a former co-host here on the Changelog a few, I would say a few hundred episodes before, but it wasn't that much. But he is now part of that team who thinks about AI and memory and all that. And it was really interesting to hear, because if you are in an agency, you work on multiple different sites, but you have one Claude. So you don't want things to bleed over from one site to the next. And these guidelines help you kind of keep track of everything. So it's an interesting problem space that came out with AI.
It's like providing the correct context and the correct amount of context so that the AI can be maximally productive on your website, whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, most people are really not all that into, site owners are not so into AI, but it helps with a few things quite nicely. I find it with SEO and with accessibility and all that. It's really helpful to have a double check there. Yeah. All right, what's next in 23.1? Do we have something? Oh yeah, there's these custom taxonomies experiment in 23.1 with the custom post types and taxonomy management that started out of, I don't know how that came about, but it probably is one of the Radical Speed Months project as well, that people say, okay, we probably need to have content management when the APIs were in WordPress in 3.1, but there's no interface there, and there were always plugins there to do this, be it custom UI, custom post UI, or ACF or so, but there's no interface for, and that's where this experiment comes in to kind of push the envelope on that a bit, have the REST controllers in there, have the interface in there, but it definitely is not the last word spoken there yet, because that is a field where there have been a lot of extensions in the universe or in the WordPress ecosystem that might not fit in where this is going. So it's just it's a prototype kind of experiment way to do that. But check it out. You just have to enable the experiment in the Gutenberg plugin, and then you can kind of try it out and work with it. It uses the common APIs. The other experiment is the dashboard. We talked a little bit about it because that's the grid package was created for that. A dashboard to have administrative page routes and sidebar menus as a shell to add additional grids on the dashboard. I'm interested to see. I haven't played with it yet, but I want to see if I can. So what are the dashboards? The dashboard right now is just the quick edit and the site health and the news that's on your dashboard right now, and a few other things, and plugin kind of tab into that. as well, but I have not seen yet, and I'm still thinking about it. To maybe Claude can help me with that. Having a quick edit that's a block editor actually. Yeah. So when you log in into your WordPress site, you don't want to
Oh,
kind of just do all the other admin stuff. You just want to create a new post. So why not have it
mhm.
on the dashboard and create a blog post right there from the quick edit. Quick edit only gives you text-based things, but not
Yeah.
block editor. So
So a
um,
block-based quick edit. Do you reckon all the blocks? I reckon it would need to be a very simplified version of the block editor,
yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
with not all the
Images,
blocks
paragraphs,
available. But yeah, that would
yeah,
be cool.
kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, lists, yeah, like an outliner, kind of, yeah, very fast, kind of,
Mhm.
yeah. Maybe come back to the white space, but kind of instead of having a classic editor, just build blocks with it. Yeah, so kind of a distraction-free, quick edit, full site edit,
Mhm.
toolbar on top kind of thing. I don't know. When I'm bored, I'm gonna start that and I
Prototype it.
prototype it, yeah, and get it in. Yeah, that was one of the things that a lot of writers had. I don't want to deal with all the stuff. I'm get so distracted. Yeah, there's announcements and all that. So let me just start my blog post. But anyway,
Mhm.
and then there is a list of media editor modal call for testing. We talked about it. There's a whole in 23.1. There's a whole list
Mhm.
of bigger and smaller PRs that went in. I think the call for testing gives you all the ins and outs of it. That I think was it. Did you find anything for 23.1 that you wanted to talk about further?
Not really, apart from the things that you've already highlighted. I just thought, no, the what I already mentioned, that the media editor is also on the
Yeah.
site logo block, so you can test it on both blocks, and that's it.
So right into Gutenberg 23.2 was released on
Mm,
May 21st. And also with 204 PRs by 50 contributors, and there were 4 first timers there. Congratulations, you got your
nice.
first contribution to WordPress core. Yeah, and you got your badge. Well, you got your
Mhm.
badge when 7.1 is released, I guess. The first feature that is listed is the responsive global block styles with states. This is so cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, what does it say? Can you walk us through it?
Yeah, so this was the first part of the work towards enabling responsive styles for blocks. And it with states because it leverages a style states API that was already built. So Maggie Cabrera was who did that initial work for the states API. And her part was just leveraging it for adding the ability to style pseudo states. For very few blocks have pseudo states. Well, this might be extended, but it won't be super extended because not all blocks need to have pseudo. By pseudo states, I mean hover, focus, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
usually only interactive blocks would need those. And so states came about to cater to that pseudo element scenario, but it was always something that could potentially be extended further. And one of the use cases that had been thought out when this initial idea of having this states API was thought, it was using it to be able to create responsive styles for blocks was one of the possibilities in there. And I had been eyeballing all those issues that have been sitting in the Gutenberg repo for years about creating some mechanism that allows us to define responsive styles. And I finally had the opportunity to pick them up. And
Yay.
having that states work already partially done was great because, sometimes it's starting something is the hard
Mm-hmm.
part, and there were endless decisions in the repo about how should we build this, and let's do this and let's do that and let's not do that, and it's like we should take this into account. And how you can talk and talk and talk and then it never actually starts
Yeah.
because it seems like the problem is too big and too complicated, and the more that's added to the discussion, the bigger and the more complicated it gets. But there was this little stepping stone. This states API had already been built, and so I thought, well, it's already in there for pseudo states. Let's try building responsive. So we call them viewport states. I've been working on this with my teammate Dan Richards. We've both started working on this and thought, okay, let's do as sort of a baseline for global styles, but then as a stretch goal, let's try and do it for actual block instance too. So we managed to do both in the end. But for 23.2, it was only the global block styles that was ready. And this means when you go into the site editor and into the styles section where you have global styles, then you go into blocks. This only works for blocks. It doesn't work for top level global styles yet. We're not quite sure. Well, we're not quite sure if there's a need to add this to top level styles yet. It's still something that's being thought about, because for a lot of them, so a lot of like really sort of global basic elements like typography, font sizes, okay, we already have ways of defining them responsively, even without using breakpoints. So we are using the clamp function. You can define a maximum and a minimum, and you can pretty much, manipulate it so that you get your different font sizes on mobile and tablet and desktop. So there is, to some extent, you already have that responsive functionality there. So that's something that might be looked at later on for enabling actual breakpoints for those global styles. But for now, it only applies to blocks. So for each block, you can go into the block's global styles, and you can pick a state. There's a new little states drop down at the top. And so you, by default, you'll be styling the default state. That's, no media query. And then you have a tablet and a mobile state. And the tablet state is only, so it's only from, the top level, like what's your maximum breakpoint, to the minimum, which is the maximum for mobile. So the tablet styles will only apply to tablet, to that breakpoint. And then the mobile styles will only apply to their own breakpoint. And yeah, essentially that's it. You can do anything, color, typography, and spacing wise. So for most blocks, you have the typography, you have the colors, you have dimensions. Like, not for most blocks, you don't have dimensions. You have, margin padding, block gap if the block has layout, and you can define per breakpoint what you want those values to be. And there are certain features that exist in global styles that do not yet work with that responsive logic. And those, so when you enter that breakpoint, you choose the tablet viewport, and you'll see that some of the tools might be hidden. So for instance, duotone is one. You can't set duotone per breakpoint yet. This is something that will be worked on in the future. But it feels like a bit like, I'm not sure how many people will need to change the colors per breakpoint. That's not usually responsive styles are more about spacing, dimensions, that sort of thing. So we focused more on those that felt like these are the ones that are really going to be used by most people. And the more edge casey ones, if they don't work out of the box, we sort of, okay, that, that's a problem for later. We'll figure it out later. And duotone is one of those.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, a lot of people have been waiting for that for a long time. So glad you finally started taking it.
I hope it's useful. I just hope that folks can take this and like, okay, I can finally build the thing and it works. And please, to anyone listening and wanting to try this out, if there's anything that's not working, if there's anything you don't like, or you think, no, this should be different because it doesn't work, just please give us feedback. We need feedback, because this is in the plugin now. It's aimed to go into 7.1. We still have those 6 weeks until beta 1. Those 6 weeks we'll be iterating on the feature. The earlier we get feedback, the better, so that we know if there's anything that really isn't working for anyone, then we can change it.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's in 23.2. There's also a WordPress component called WordPress theme, and that's actually the theme for the admin section. I mean, we have a definitely a confusion things going on because we use the same term for multiple things that are totally different and have nothing to do with each other, except there are now motion design tokens for duration and easing in the WordPress theme component. So if you want to use those for your admin pages and plugins, go have at it. I am really, because it kind of gets you a little bit more into a more interactive way to build websites, and I think we really like those, or I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, although I'm not a motion or animation kind of person, but yeah, I like when it's nice,
Yeah,
it
little
comes together.
bits
Yeah,
of discrete, smooth animation here and there can really make a web experience.
yeah, it's kind of a quality of life kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, what else is in the 23? Yeah, the content types. So it was an iteration on, we talked about it on the content types experiments with various improvements on post type and taxonomy management, duplicate view, quick edit actions. A ton of PRs have been added to that. So it definitely is maturing, and you
Mm-hmm.
can, with 23.2, also the media editor model had matured, and there is now, I also will share in the show notes a link to an overview issue on the dashboard experiment, so you can go back and read up about it, what it's all about, because there's a whole lot of work still being done with that. There's also an experiment on the classic block migration. Notice I'm just pointing that out because you might see it that the classic block might get deprecated or might not be available in certain situations.
Yeah, I believe the plan is to deprecate it and remove it at some point, but it's a whole process because I guess lots of folks are using it, so it needs to be slow, give people time to adjust, choose alternatives.
Yeah, well, it has been in Gutenberg for 8 years and all that. And actually, what I found is that some of the AI tools actually create blocks that are looking like classic blocks and need to be migrated to blocks before they can be in the block editor canvas. So yeah, those things also need to be kind of tested in
Hmm.
that space.
Yeah, that's a good
23.
point. With AI tools increasingly being used to build websites and create and or move content across from other places, you don't want AI sort of adding the classic block to its knowledge base and suddenly deciding that the easiest way to do anything is to just dump all the content into a classic block.
Which what they're doing
So
right now, yeah,
I
or
think,
an
yeah, so
HTML
this is
block,
a
yeah.
good time to deprecate it so that,
Yeah.
okay, let's ensure that AI works properly, that it's easier for AI tools to work properly and do
Yeah.
things as we expect them to.
It hasn't been merged yet, but there is also a documentation issue. It was a big undertaking that Juan Margarito took on, was that it was found that an AI can't really find documentation on the block markup for each of the core blocks. And that was a
Mm,
documentation gap that was kind of found, that none of the block library blocks had a README. So it wouldn't. So what Juan Ma did, he created automatically from the block JSON files a README for each block on documentation site, and then created some tokens where you can have on the README additional manual content that's put in there, and then have a parser go through that and put it into the block editor handbook. And that is a really, so it talks about the supports, it talks about the global styles design tools, supports about the
mhm.
block markup, and also the connection with other blocks. So it is it's a comprehensive documentation about each block, and that's in the block handbook. It will be
Nice.
merged. We had a hallway hangout on it. We had a proposal on MakeBlog, a core blog about that. And I think it's finally going to be merged within, I hope, a week, but maybe days.
Oh, cool. That'll be
And
super
so it
useful.
will be in the block editor handbook. It has an additional 80 pages, of course, yeah, but they're all connected and categorized by blocks. And so now block developers, and there were some comments from the community where people said, well, I wish I had that when I was starting out learning about block development. Yeah, and now it's finally coming. But it was a huge undertaking because it kind of created a ton of new code. and that all needs to be reviewed. And it was so, but there were a lot of people kind of working on that, guided or spearheaded by Juan Ma, but it's now coming and it's really cool. I'm so happy that it made it.
I mean, you can never have too much documentation, but developers are crap at writing it. So, now nowadays we have tools to assist us in the creation of the documentation, and we should leverage them.
Yeah, and the hybrid version, automatic documentation plus a way to have also manual content in that, is actually a good combination, because for some of the blocks, Joe Dawson from the accessibility team has said, okay, maybe we also want to have some documentation about the accessibility of blocks. And anybody who has comments on that can add it to the README file of that particular block to elaborate on that. And that is outside of any automation. Yeah, you can it just add it to the page, and it was really cool to see that process working. I post a link to the proposal into the show notes, just as a side note here. And now we're coming to 23.3. That was just released a day ago, June 3rd, with 270 closed PRs and 57 contributors. So we are ramping up to 7.1 kind of thing. And the first
Yeah.
item on that is really cool, that you can now, that the notes section, and I think it was Adam Silverstein as well who worked on that.
Oh, yeah, the multiple notes per block. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's really useful.
Yeah, so you can have multiple threads or comments that per block. That's also helpful when you work with AI that comes in and kind of reviews some of your posts and posts notes in there. So yeah, it was really helpful. And it's also, and he found it to be necessary to have that. So what's missing in the notes in comparison to Google Docs is that you can highlight a section and then comment on that section. So yeah, like, okay, you probably can delete this half sentence or something like that. And that you couldn't do that up until now. And with the multi-threads on the notes for a block, you can highlight a section, because if the paragraph is, I don't know, 10 lines or something like that, you might have multiple comments on that block, and now you can have that. So it's really cool.
Yeah. So the note is attached to a part of a block and not to the block itself.
Yeah. Yeah. The next sections are a continuation on your quest for responsive styles.
Yeah, that's part two of the work, which is enabling responsive styles for block instances. So again, this was a part. So Maggie Cabrera had worked on the pseudo style states for global styles, and she had an open PR to add them to block instances. And Dan and I basically hijacked her PR with her approval. Of course, we asked Maggie first, can we just take this work that you, she was off doing something else. She wasn't actively working on the PR at the time. We thought, we could just take that over and finish it and then build the responsive styles on top of it. So we did. And that, obviously there was work already pre-existing, so it sort of made it easier to build it step by step on top of it. And now we have in 23.3 the ability to add responsive styles to, so any block, open a post, pick a block, open the inspector controls, and then at the top where you have the block name, you have this little menu which with a drop down that has the states. So again, just like with global styles, we have tablet and mobile. The default is what you get by default, what you already had. And then you have a tablet breakpoint and a mobile breakpoint. And for those, again, as in global styles, there are a few things that didn't really work out of the box, a few of the controls. So we decided to hide everything that doesn't work. So for now, what's enabled is only the controls that you can actually create responsive styles with. Those are pretty much all the block supports, the standard block supports like color, typography, dimensions, block gap. Now layout is also supported. And a sort of side effect of that was that we ended up moving the layout panel into the styles tab. And well, that was sort of I'd been wanting to do that for ages, I have to say, because to me, it didn't make any sense at all that layout was in the settings tab and dimensions, which has controls that are intimately related to layout, such as block gap, was in the styles tab. And so I felt the only thing that makes sense is to have them side by side. If it's not the same panel, which I still think we could maybe make it the same panel, but that's a different conversation. But at least they're side by side. So now layout is in the styles panel. That's the reason why it's in the styles panel. So when we have a responsive state enabled, we're only showing the styles panel in the inspector and only the controls that work, which is most of them. There's a couple of things that we had to hide. Again, duotone, things like that. And for block instances, some blocks have custom controls, and some of those custom controls should probably become block supports. Some are like aspect ratio is a block support, but there's only one block using it. And there's a couple of blocks that have their own custom implementation of aspect ratio. This is something that should change. I have an open PR to try and enable aspect ratio to work responsively, because I feel that that's one of the important ones that people will want to change aspect ratios for different breakpoints. So that's in progress. And what our plan is basically to try to get as much as we can working until 7.1.
Awesome. So when I want to start testing this, I'm going to add a paragraph to my block canvas. And then I go to the block inspector and say, okay, this paragraph, I want a different background for a different viewport. So on the mobile, I want it green, and on tablet, I want it yellow, and on desktop, I want it gray.
Yep, you can do that.
Okay. Yeah, so that's how I will test
it. You go into, so you give the default, the desktop is the default. I guess we're never mobile first, really. I mean, the Gutenberg has from the beginning been a desktop first experience. And that's how it's sort of turned out to be. So you have default desktop, and then you can go into the tablet state. You can select the tablet state, and then whatever you add to the visible controls in the block inspector in that state is exclusive to that state. And you can go into the mobile and choose a different color for that and save everything. And then you can go and do the good old resizing in the block editor, we leveraging the responsive preview, the sort of device specific preview, to show you a preview of what the styles are as you're editing them. And then once you go into the front end, you can resize your window to your heart's content and see all the changes happening.
All right. So that is really cool. And I'm looking forward to kind of testing it out and trying it out and have opinions.
Yeah, no, lots of opinions, I'm sure. And one of the things that I feel like we haven't got 100% right is the previewing, because you switch, like you go enable mobile state for this block, and it switches you to the mobile preview, but then you can select another block while still being in the mobile preview, and then you're not in the mobile state for that block. So I feel like this is something that we're working on. We need to improve that experience, and feedback again, very welcome. What your opinions on this and how you think it would be the most intuitive to work with.
Well, awesome. Yeah. I'm thinking maybe we should actually have a demo hallway hangout about that somewhere. Let me think about that.
Maybe.
Well, yeah. I have a time issue because I'm going on vacation. So
okay,
I'm coming back to the beginning of July. But yeah, definitely maybe find somebody to do a demo video or something like that. Well, the demos are all on the PRs, so definitely check those out, because they're the best way to learn how to use that and what works or what doesn't work. Yeah. All right. What's else in 23.3?
Oh, there was so much. Well, the media editor was stabilized, so now it's no longer an experiment. You get it by default, whether you want it or not. Again, I mean, we hope to get feedback on that. I think it's a pretty good piece of work, honestly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to, you said it you talked about it, but if you are looking for the layout panel after 23.3 Gutenberg plugin install, it's not hidden, it's not lost, it's in the styles tab now.
Yes.
There are some content creators that are not interested in this or that they might have a little, oops, where is it kind of thing. It's in the other tab now. Yeah.
And that is, it might be weird for blocks that still have a settings panel. So for blocks, what happened with the group block, for instance, the group block only had layout and position in settings. So we moved position into styles too, because it makes sense. Position is a style. And now the group block doesn't have a settings tab. So you open the group. I think it's much easier because you don't have to be clicking, clicking, clicking.
Yeah.
Everything's there, everything's visible, layout, position, all the other controls in the same tab. For other blocks, for instance, the navigation block still has a bunch of stuff in settings. So if you're, put a navigation block on the page, and suddenly you're, oh, where's the layout controls gone? Okay, they're in the styles tab. They're no longer in the settings tab.
I just want to point that out for people who kind of miss that part because they're so excited about the responsiveness things. And then there's also, there was one thing that was fixed. It was I would say it was a bug, but it is an enhancement that the additional CSS, if there was an error in there, you wouldn't see that when you get back into the post again until you interact with the additional CSS field. You wouldn't see the error message. So unless you interact with that, you wouldn't see that it's actually not working. That has changed. That now has a little notification that there is something in the additional CSS that's not valid CSS for those who muck about with that. Yeah, and here it is, the PR 78653 has the modal editor, media editor, image cropper modal being the default experience for the block editor. It's out of experiments. And another thing for 23.3 is that Gutenberg upgraded to React 19. This is important for plugin developers and those who have a very tight handle on the dependencies for their work. React 19 is now the default, and there might be dragons out there. Please, 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 give feedback on that. Create issues. What works and what doesn't work, especially what doesn't work, so that those can be fixed prior to 7.1, so you don't have any surprises later on. What else? I think those were the big items.
Yeah, I mean, I've been sort of like under my responsive styles rock for these past few weeks, just working on that, very very fixated on getting this thing right.
Well,
so I have to say, I mean,
it's definitely
I haven't paid
God's
a
work.
huge amount of attention to
Yeah,
what else is out there.
Definitely God's work.
Hopefully it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's it. There are, as I said, there are 270 PRs. So yeah, and it just has been released for a while ago.
There's a lot of enhancements and bug fixes and stuff in here.
Yeah, that's it. I think we are good. So, dear listeners, you will see on the weekend edition, and the Gutenberg Changelog will pause during my vacation. I'm going on vacation next week, which is June 15th, and I'm coming back in beginning of July. So in time for 7.1 beta, you'll hear us again and you will read us again. I'm so happy, Isabel, you were here on the show to walk us through all the good things that come with Gutenberg to 7.1, especially the responsive parts. The responsive parts. I like that. Responsive parts. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy work schedule and be on the show and walk us through that.
No worries. You always enjoy this show.
Well, thank you so much. And as always, dear listeners, the show notes will be published on gutenbergtimes.com/podcast. This is episode 131, 131st. And if you have questions or suggestions or news you want us to include, send them to changelog@gutenbergtimes.com. That's changelog@gutenbergtimes.com. Thank you all for listening. And until the next time, and I see you in July. Bye-bye.
Bye.